The 1960s creative geniuses of Marvel Comics has granted us many joys. Two of the biggest ones being Mr. Stretchy Pants himself, the Incredible Hulk, and everyone's favorite masked menace, the Amazing Spider-Man.
Who are you?
Your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man.
While these two seem totally different on the surface, there's actually more in common between these heroes than you may think.
Oh, it's definitely the end times.
Before we compare these two comic titans, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and join the notification squad. Pioneers. The 1960s was by far one of the most important decades for comic books, with perhaps only the 1940s and 1990s being in contention for most important. One of the reasons why the 60s was so huge is due to the explosion of brand new characters from Marvel Comics. Two of the most popular characters from that big bang are none other than the Incredible Hulk and the Amazing Spider-Man. Created just a mere 3 months apart from each other, the Incredible Hulk #1 hit newsstands on May 1st, 1962. Created by Jack Kirby and Stan Lee, the book combined two classic horror movie concepts into one great giant. Put Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde and Frankenstein into a blender and you get the Hulk.
Why don't we do this the easy way where you don't use that and the other guy doesn't make a mess?
While most heroes before him, like Superman and Batman, were pure forces of good, Hulk was more akin to a force of nature than anything else. Then, on August 10th, 1962, the cultural icon Spider-Man was born, courtesy of writer Stan Lee and artist Steve Ditko. Not a teenage sidekick, but his own superhero. Spider-Man brought teenage angst and reliability to the genre that was never seen before.
So you want to look out for the little guy, you want to do your part, make the world a better place, all that, right?
Yeah, just looking out for the little guy.
Trailblazers in their own ways, Spider-Man and the Hulk are groundbreakers in the comic book medium. Color confusion. Viewers, help us out over here. We're going to show you the original covers for both the Incredible Hulk #1 and Amazing Fantasy #15, the first appearances of the Hulk and Spider-Man. The kicker is you have to tell us what colors you see. We'll wait. Now, obviously upon inspection, they look a little different. Here's why. Hulk's case is easier to explain. Co-creator of the Hulk, Stan Lee, always intended for the Hulk to be gray. However, because of the color technology at the time of his creation in 1962, it was too hard to get the right shade of gray consistently. Thus, after the first appearance, he was made green. Spider-Man's original costume is thought to be red and blue, and that's only sort of true. If you were to look at the original issues as drawn by co-creator Steve Ditko, Spidey's suit is actually more red and black. Yes, he does have blue highlights in the black, but Ditko always had a little more sinister look to the Spider-Man's world in the original issues. This also helps the Daily Bugle's case as to why Spidey is a menace.
Who is Spider-Man? He's a criminal, that's who he is.
He sure looks like one. The end of heroes. Like we said previously, death in comics is about as common as a reboot. Some characters like Jean Grey and Professor X have died more times than you can shake a stick at. By comparison, the amount of times that Spider-Man and the Hulk have bit the dust is relatively low. Keep in mind that we're not including alternate universe tales here, because if that were the case, well, we'd have a lot more material. Sticking to Marvel 616, aka the main Marvel universe, Spider-Man has died, let's say 3 times. The first time was at the hands of a woman created by Thanos in the Infinity Gauntlet event. Next was when he got kissed by the Queen and died, then shortly afterwards gave birth to himself. We know. Yeah, don't ask.
Oh, it's definitely the end times.
Finally, we have that time where he died and grew a new body. Also, don't ask. Not to mention that whole mind-swapping thing with Doc Ock. Hulk, on the other hand, is much simpler to explain. Hawkeye took him out with an arrow while he was in Bruce Banner form during Civil War II. Well, that was easy. Sure, he was resurrected by the Hand as an undead Hulk, but does being a zombie really count?
I'm gonna guess that's not good.
Triple trouble. Superhero movies recasting actors is as common as reboots and killing off characters in the comics. Heck, look at how many Batmen there's been. Amazingly, if we were to look at the big screen adaptations of Spider-Man and the Hulk, there have been 3 actors for each hero. Let's start off with the Hulk. Bill Bixby's portrayal of Dr. Banner might be iconic for an entire generation, but the first actor to be in a film is Australian actor Eric Bana. While his movie wasn't well received, his performance as Bruce Banner was well received for showcasing the repressed anger that somebody like Banner would have. Edward Norton's portrayal was also good by taking what worked from Banner's portrayal, but also adding in more energy and desperation. Finally, we have Mark Ruffalo, who shows off Banner's more geeky side, but since he's never had a solo movie, it's harder to judge compared to his predecessors.
That's nice. It's a nice sentiment.
And what can be said about the Spider-Man actors when that hasn't been said already? Tobey Maguire's version perfectly captured the classic nerdy, awkward Peter Parker that can be very emotional, while Andrew Garfield's more so played up Spider-Man's cool factor and smoothness under the mask. Each one has their strengths and weaknesses, and while the jury is still out on Tom Holland's Spider-Man, we won't have to wait much longer to find out.
So you want to look out for the little guy, you want to do your part, make the world a better place, all that, right?
Yeah, just looking out for the little guy.
Demonic interactions. Just because Spider-Man and the Hulk have saved the world from villains time and time again, that doesn't mean they're immune from dealing with demons of the highest evil. Both Spidey and the Hulk have had tussles with demons, but instead of fighting them, they both had, unique things to do with them. Let's get the more well-known one out of the way. In 2007, Spidey's Aunt May got shot in the chest by a sniper hired by the Kingpin. Desperate to save his aunt's life, he makes a deal with the devil of the Marvel Universe, Mephisto, to trade his marriage to Mary Jane for May's life. We're really resisting the urge to give that story the thrashing it deserves, because we have to talk about the Hulk smash of Umar the Unrelenting. In Defenders Volume 3, Number 3, the sister of Dormammu, called Umar, mind controls the Hulk. Instead of using him to break things, she instead chains him up and uses him as a toy. We'd say the Hulk had better demonic interaction, wouldn't you say, Petey? Spider Smash. If anyone knows anything about the character, it's the fact that Dr. Bruce Banner can turn into a giant green monster at any time if he lets his rage get the best of him. What people may not know is that the fact that Spider-Man at one point also had this power. It may have only lasted for one issue, but in Web of Spider-Man number 70, comic readers had a chance to see two of Marvel's greatest characters get thrown into a blender with incredible results. The story starts with Peter recapping the last issue where he was zapped, and we're quoting here, with an electronic thingy. Peter rushes out of the Daily Bugle where he transforms into a Spider Hulk. And yes, he does say Spider Smash. After leaping away and passing out, Peter finds he was zapped by a machine of Rick Jones that contained bioenergy from the Hulk. Sure, that sounds about as comic booky enough to make sense. Peter eventually finds the device and is able to get rid of his Hulk powers, and we're glad he did. It wasn't like Spidey was gonna pull out any clever one-liners while in Hulk form. Popularity. With the success of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, characters that were once B-listers in the Marvel Universe have been bumped up to A-list status, including Iron Man, Black Widow, and Thor. Prior to the MCU's explosion into the pop culture, there were two figures that stood head and shoulders above other Marvel characters in the mainstream, those being Spider-Man and the Incredible Hulk. The case for Spider-Man is easy to explain. Ever since the Wall Crawler's inception back in 1962, Spider has been Marvel's mascot and most popular character. Nobody coming close to knocking him off his perch. In fact, based on a study done by the Licensing Letter magazine in 2013, the Spider-Man brand generated $1.3 billion for Disney that year, with the next closest brand being Batman at a mere $494 million. Who's rich now, Brucey? While the Hulk can't compare with that kind of numbers, if you were to ask people the name of some superheroes prior to the MCU, chances are they would say the Hulk. Much of that mainstream recognition has to do with CBS's Incredible Hulk television series. You know, the one that made that superstar out of Lou Ferrigno? Aside from the show, Hulk had been in numerous forms of media and was generally known by everyone. How do you ignore a giant green rage monster anyway? Lost love interests. Women in refrigerators is a long-running trope in comics that has been heavily criticized by many, including comics industry legend Gail Simone. Basically, it's a trope where women are taken out or generally have something horrible happen to them purely to motivate the male hero.
This is gonna end well.
As it turns out, both Spider-Man and Hulk writers are guilty of this trope. It could be argued, in fact, that the death of Gwen Stacy is the first ever victim of this trope. In Amazing Spider-Man 121, Gwen Stacy is captured by Spidey nemesis the Green Goblin and thrown off the bridge, only for Spider-Man to throw a web line in an attempt to save her. The grief and rage of the accident drives Peter to nearly off Norman Osborn, but he refrains at the last second. The death of Hulk love interest Betty Ross happened years later, was much more complex and not nearly as hard-hitting as Stacy's death. In this case, Hulk arch-villain the Abomination slipped some of his radioactive blood to Betty Ross, which slowly poisoned her until she passed away. Even Green Goblin hasn't thought of giving Mary Jane the Goblin Serum. Hello, my dear. And he's done some messed up stuff to our wall crawler. Boom! Science. Sure, You can throw a rock in any direction inside comic book universes and you'll probably hit a scientist. That shouldn't discount the scientific acumens of Bruce Banner and Peter Parker, however. Growing up under the loving Uncle Ben and Aunt May, Parker's scientific genius was nurtured by his relatives since he was young. With his interests in various forms of science including chemistry, physics, and biology, he's created numerous gadgets over the years, but his most impressive invention of all time is still his mechanical web shooters, which he somehow created as a poor teenager from Forest Hills. Now, on the other hand, Bruce Banner didn't quite have the parental figures that Parker had. While Bruce's mother Rebecca was a loving woman, Bruce's father Brian was a dirtbag who couldn't handle the idea of his wife loving someone other than him. In spite of a rough childhood, Banner became the world's leading mind on gamma radiation and a genius in several fields of science. Once Norman Osborn became the most powerful man on the planet as a result of Secret Invasion, it was unveiled that the Hulk was classified as the fourth smartest person on the planet. While Parker might not be in those talks of smartest person in the Marvel Universe, they are both geniuses nonetheless. Incredibly amazing writer. Peter Parker isn't the only Peter we're mentioning on this list. Parker and Banner may have radioactive powers, but they probably couldn't write a comic for beans. Luckily, that's where Peter David comes in. Both Spider-Man fans and Incredible Hulk fans should recognize Peter David as one of the best scribes to ever write both of these characters. In terms of his contributions to the Hulk, Peter David wrote the character for 10 years straight, from the late 80s to the late 90s. In the era of revolving door creative teams, that is a miracle. Under David's run, the Joe Fixit persona of the Hulk was created, and he delved deeper into the childhood trauma which transformed him into the giant known to millions. As for his run on the Wall Crawler, it wasn't quite as interrupted as Hulk run, but his contributions to the character are significant nonetheless. David is responsible for the acclaimed Death of Jean DeWolf, The Commuter Cometh, and Spider-Man 2099. Nowadays, he's at the helm of the controversial Ben Reilly The Scarlet Spider title. If anyone can make that story work, it's gotta be Peter David.
Gotta say, that's awesome.
Well, that's it for our list. What are some other things between the two that you find Jade Giant and Wall Crawler? We're just keeping our fingers crossed for some interaction between the two in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Don't forget to like this video, share it, and subscribe to CBR for more awesome videos. Thanks for watching, true believers.